What you believe about yourself becomes the road beneath your feet. Gratitude can turn the poorest pocket into the most powerful engine. Sometimes an empire begins with a single, torn pair of shoes. This is the story of a boy who wore a crown made of cardboard. Armin grew up in a small town where the streets were dusty and dreams felt far away. His father had died when he was still a baby. His mother worked day and night, so there would be rice in the pot and a little light left for hope. Armin went to school in old clothes and torn shoes. Children pointed, wrinkled their noses, and whispered that he smelled bad. They called him a beggar. Armin kept his head down and said nothing, eyes fixed on those broken shoes. One hot morning on the way to school, Armin saw a boy sitting near the playground. The boy had no legs. He watched the other children run and chase each other in the dust. The boy looked at Armin's feet, smiled and said, "Your shoes are nice." Armin froze. He stared at his torn shoes, then at the place where the boy's legs should have been. His chest tightened. Something inside shifted, like a door he didn't know existed, swinging open. That night he could not sleep. The boy's voice echoed in his mind, soft but unstoppable. For the first time, Armin felt thankful, not for anything new, but for what had been his all along. He had legs, he could walk, he could run. Maybe he wasn't as poor as he had believed. The next day, when the laughter came, Armin lifted his head and said quietly, "At least I can run. Some children can't." The courtyard fell silent. The boys looked at each other, unsure how to hold their mockery now that it had nowhere to land. From that day, Armin stopped wearing shame like a coat. He stood a little straighter. He began to help his mother more, sweeping the floor, washing bowls, carrying water. He studied harder. After school, he worked. He sold newspapers. He cleaned shoes at the railway station, polishing each pair until it shone like a promise. He saved every coin. Little stacks of silver lined up in an old tin under his bed. He never begged. He never waited for luck to find him. He gave his best each day, and then a little more. One evening, while Armin was shining a pair of black dress shoes, a man in a suit asked, "Why are you working instead of playing like other boys?" Armin looked up, "Because I want to build a life where no one needs to laugh at others to feel strong." The man said nothing more. He simply nodded, paid generously, and walked away. Armin felt the weight of that kindness and added it to his tin, not as charity, but as fuel. Years turned like pages. Armin kept learning, working, and dreaming. Whenever life pushed him down, he remembered the boy with no legs, and his strength returned like morning light. Gratitude became his compass, discipline became his shoes. One summer, the sun was cruel and the roads were empty. It was the kind of heat that made the air wobble above the pavement. Armin stood outside a small shop he had finally opened, his first real risk. He had used every rupee he saved and borrowed a little besides. The sign above the door read, "Bloom Empire." Inside, there were flowers and books, candles and small gifts. On the shelves sat handmade products bought from poor families. Their work could find a market, and their homes could find relief. People laughed. "Who starts a business in a heat like this?" they said. But Armin stood by the door every day, sweat on his forehead, hope in his eyes, welcoming anyone who came. At first, people arrived for the flowers, then they came back for the warmth in his voice. They told friends, those friends told others. Soon, the town began talking about the young man who used to shine shoes, and now sold something bigger than goods. He sold encouragement, dignity, and the feeling that you mattered when you stepped through his door. In a few years, Bloom Empire opened stores in every big city. The shelves multiplied. The handiwork of poor families found a path into homes across the country. Then came online orders, packages leaving at dawn, thank you notes arriving at dusk. Then international sales voices from faraway places, asking for the same warmth they had heard about. Armin traveled, gave speeches, and shared the simple idea that had rebuilt his life. You can become what you choose to think today. He helped build schools, not just walls but classrooms where children learned to believe in their own hands. He offered seed money and training so street children could start small businesses and steer their own futures. Today, Armin is the CEO of a global company. Bloom Empire supports more than 5,000 poor families around the world. He wears suits now, flies on planes, and speaks on big stages with bright lights and loud applause. But in his glass office, there is one object that visitors always notice: his old torn shoes, sitting on a simple stand. When someone asks why he keeps them, Armin smiles. "These remind me that success isn't about where you start. It's about what you choose to believe each day. Don't wait for perfect tools, build with what you have. You may be poor, but you are not empty. You may be small, but you are not weak. Even in the hottest sun, a flower can rise. So can you. He pauses then, looking at the shoes as if they still hold heat from those long walks to school. People will see the empire, he says softly. Only you will know it began with gratitude and with broken shoes. Once upon a time in a faraway land, there was a king who had a son, and the king called the son all sorts of names. Names that stung like bee stings and cut deep into his heart. Lazy, good for nothing, worthless. The king would shake his head and sigh. If only someone had told me you were going to be a failure, I would have thrown you out on the street. The young man heard these words so often that he started to believe them. He became a failure. But then one day the king fell ill and the young man took over the kingdom. To his surprise, he found that he didn't like being in charge. It was hard work. He remembered all the times his father had called him lazy and worthless, and he thought, maybe my father was right. Maybe I am lazy and worthless. Then he looked around at the beautiful kingdom and thought, I don't want to be a failure. I want to make my father proud. So he started to work, not because he wanted to be a great king, but because he didn't want to be a failure. And that small step grew into something big.